Hey guys, right after the devs released the Archmage update, they put this post talking about whether or not, we should balance the classes. So I don't really like that update. I thought that was it was one of the worst updates, definitely the worst update in global, and maybe one of the worst updates of all times, we're still figuring out things with the algorithms. But if that update ended up creating the next update being a balance update, which this looks like it might be, because it says they'll help us work on future updates. It looks like the devs are listening. They might actually balance the game, which would be a game changer for Frostborn if they allowed more classes to have a role in PvP. Maybe they created some kind of cycle to where different classes countered other classes and then other classes countered other classes. It would be amazing. So in this episode, I am going to go through all of the classes and all of the weapons and give my opinions on what the devs should change to make Frostborn that timeless game that we can enjoy forever. And then you guys can put in the comments your opinions of what you think is needed for the game to be balanced and create that timeless, perfect game. And the devs watch all of my videos, so if you make a good comment or people like your comment enough, then the devs will probably see that comment and see that suggestion and hopefully implement it into the game. So the first thing that I'm going to just say as we start off is that it kind of seems universal that the Thrasher is the most desired for the devs to buff. It just feels like almost everyone wants the Thrasher to experience a huge buff and to be able to have a play. Right now the Thrasher is absolutely horrible. It's pretty much unusable, and there's a couple reasons for that. At first I was saying, increase his hit points to 100 hit points and make it a little tankier because it is a tank, and one of the pro players of Frostborn kind of pushed back on that idea, and he's like, honestly, even with 100 hit points bonus from the Thrasher, I think the Thrasher would still be kind of a crappy character. And as I've thought about it, I thought, oh yeah, you know what, you might be right. His suggestion, which I really liked, was to make the leap. It doesn't even say this on here, it just says it stuns for 2 seconds. He was saying just make it pretty much instant. Instead of a long leap, just make it an instant leap to stun people, or like a charge and then stun everyone in the area. And I thought that was a really good idea. He also made this suggestion of making the stunning barrier just 1 second stun, but everyone that shoots you during those 6 seconds will get that 1 second stun. It would make the Thrasher the best 1v1 warrior because you would have so much stunning ability, and you could it would really make the Thrasher pretty powerful. But that's what we're wanting. We're wanting the Thrasher to have a role. Then they could change the health and damage to make sure that it's balanced. And really, that's one of the main things, one of my biggest opinions that I hope the devs factor in, is that we don't want huge changes. A lot of you guys, I don't know if y'all remember, but the Bandit used to be one of the most OP classes in the game. And they were like, oh, we got to fix this. And then they nerfed the Blinding Rune so much that it kind of just killed the Bandit. Now the Bandit's almost unusable. That same pro player was like, just delete the Bandit. It's just such a crappy class. I don't know if I agree with him on that, because I kind of like the idea of the immobilizing of the throwing dagger. Personally, I think that they should make the throwing dagger more than 3 seconds, maybe buff it up to 4 seconds, make it a full extra bola. But the point is that I kind of like the Bandit. They obviously need to buff the Bandit because it's not usable at this point, but they could do that in several ways. They could make the Blinding Rune a little bit. I already mentioned, increasing the duration of the throwing dagger, making the Blinded Rune have a little bit slower cooldown. Honestly, one of the things that he said that I thought was really good is he was like, if the Bandit were as powerful as it was back then, but with what we know now as a community, the Frostborn community has gotten so much better at playing this game. He's like, I don't think the Bandit would be very usable, even if it was even if it was returned to its original state. We've just gotten so much better at using dispels, at knowing how to play. He's like, it probably wouldn't be that good of a class, even if you restored it to its original thing. Even if you restored it to its original power that we thought back then was so overpowered. So I thought that was a really good point. I think I agree with him. One thing that I would like the devs to do that I think would be really important to create a truly timeless game is to create a cyclical nature of some classes counter other classes, these classes counter, different classes, and so on and so forth. And so one of the things that I think the devs should do is they need to have different classes counter different things. So for example, the hunter is already kind of counters tanks, and so I think they should really lean into that and say, okay, the hunter, originally I was thinking we give the hunter a little bit more hit points, but since then I've kind of been inspired by Garasu's rendition of the Thrasher, and I've thought, no, that's not dynamic enough. So what I think that they should do for the hunter is they should make his mortal shot, keep it the same way it is for 9 seconds. The enemy's healing, maybe increase it to 60%, and then they should add some poison damage, or just basically eliminate all healing for 9 seconds. Make the hunter this really powerful tank killer. Make it to where the hunter versus the protector is going to be terrified of the hunter, because the hunter's just always going to win against the protector. And then with the other tanks, it's kind of the hunter has an advantage, but maybe not that big of a deal. The Sharpshooter and Pathfinder already pretty much decimate the hunter. There's already some cyclical nature of that, but then create maybe the Berserk. It seems like they are wanting the Berserk to be good against ranged characters, but it's not good enough as it is. And so one thing I thought that they could do for the Berserk that would create this cyclical nature is make it to where the Berserk is immune to burning and poison. Because if the Berserk was immune to basically burning, it would be like a constant dispel potion for just burning. It would make the Berserk an instant counter to all archers. So if the archers saw the Berserk, they'd be like, oh crap, this guy counters me. I could still beat him if I, play my cards right, if I bola him just right, or if I, make sure to stun him in the time that I need, but my firebow's not going to do any extra damage to him, so he gets the benefit of all of his tanky armor, which would make the Berserk really powerful against those archers. If the Berserk was able to bola you and get close to you, you'd be like, oh no, I don't really stand a chance. But the Berserk wouldn't be nearly as powerful against a mage, and as it is right now, mages are gonna really decimate a Berserk, and so that would create that circular nature of the rock paper scissors effect, that often when you create a game you can't make it perfectly balanced, and so if you create a rock paper scissors effect, it almost creates a balance in the fact that people are like, oh, okay, well, this guy is countering me, but I can switch to a different class, or I can get my buddy who's a different class to come in and help me out. And so no one's safe. No one has the OP class that is going to just decimate everyone, kind of like the Sharpshooter has been. Speaking of the Sharpshooter, obviously with some of these other changes, maybe you don't need to debuff the Sharpshooter. Maybe with the Hunter being a really good tank killer, and the Pathfinder's already a really good class for team fighting. Maybe the Sharpshooter could stay as it is, or they could reduce the hit points of the Sharpshooter. And that's what I think that the devs should do. Anytime that it's like, oh, it's just really close. Like we don't need to make a big change. It's just a little bit more powerful. Let's reduce the Sharpshooter's hit points by 10. 5 for each class level. That's not a whole lot, but it could make a big difference in those close fights and make the Sharpshooter just a little bit more balanced. The Rogue is honestly, I think, balanced as it is. It's a really good PvE class, and I've seen people do some amazing things with the horse, and so honestly, I would say keep the Rogue as it is. It already has a role in the game. It has the fastest burst of speed, which a lot of people use that for defense, and a few people use that for offense. It's just a really good class. So I wouldn't touch the Rogue. The same with the Healer. The Healer is actually probably the most OP class in the game, but it requires, a team to be OP. And in my experience with other games, if you don't make the support class a little bit OP, it's just not fun to play the support class because, you know, you're not the one doing the damage, or you're not the one tanking all the damage. You're the supporting class. And so if you aren't really needed, if you aren't really important, then I think that it's kind of not that fun to play the support class. So I'm glad the healer is OP. I hope they keep it that way. And the Sorcerer, honestly, the Sorcerer is a lot more powerful than people think that it is. It is a huge damage dealer. It's amazing for PvE, but I would love to see the Sorcerer show up in a few PvP fights. I think that it would be kind of cool to have the Sorcerer in there. So I think they could tweak the levels a little bit more, maybe make the support staff damage even more, maybe 80%. Because in reality, compared to the healer, the Sorcerer is crap. The Sorcerer is an okay class, but compared to the healer, it's just not even close to where it needs to be. So if the devs wanted to have the Sorcerer show up in a few PvP fights, at least as an option, then they could either increase its damage or they could really reduce this, because the curse is kind of worthless in PvE. So honestly, I think they could make this like 30% damage dealt, and they could make the increases hunger and thirst by like way more, like basically to make it to where if you get hit by it and you stay in for a few seconds, you're gonna be starving almost instantly. That would really buff its PvP abilities without giving it too much of a players versus enemies boost. And so I think that would be one way, but again, the Sorcerer is not that important. The Shaman, on the other hand, is supposed to be a PvE class. You can see at the top there where it says Shaman, it says role, PvP. So it's supposed to be this epic, really powerful PvP class, and no one really ever plays it. I mean, it's really powerful in Helheim Rifts because you can kind of scare people into the enemies and the enemies kill them, but other than that, it's kind of a crappy character. And so there's several ways that I think that they could increase and kind of buff the Shaman to make it awesome for PvP. I think that, you know, obviously they can always tweak support staff levels and, you know, health, but I think the Shaman needs a lot more help than that. One thing that I thought, you know, would be in line with what they're already doing is making the gear recharge 50% faster. Basically, they are going to use gear, stun hammers, dispel potion, all of those things twice as fast as everyone else. We only have so many quick slots, and even twice as fast probably isn't going to make the Shaman. People are still going to be the healer. They need to buff the Shaman to be good enough to where people would say, you know what, we're going to forego having a healer and we're going to go for a Shaman, because that's going to be our style of gameplay as a family. And so you got to make the Shaman a lot better. So even with gear recharging 50%, I don't think they're going to get there. The fear skill is really cool. I mean, being able to scare someone for 4 seconds, take someone out of a battle for that long is huge. But if they get attacked while, you know, they're in the middle of it, interrupts the effect, so they just join the fight again. So that's not very good. And then that's it. Like you're then on a cooldown for 35 seconds, which is a shorter cooldown. I think they reduced that, but it's still like that's your one skill, because the stun rune is pretty much a worthless skill. It lasts a long time. You have some kind of zone of control, but functionally it feels almost impossible to use it. Maybe when you're defending your base, there could be some strength in the Shaman to be able to scare someone off and then do the stun rune so that the team can't run out of your base. But again, we're talking about very small, very minute uses for the Shaman. We got a few uses at Helheim Rift. Most of the time, you know, it doesn't work. A lot of times with teams, you do that fear, and then one of your teammates was already doing an area effect skill, and it just cancels it. So the Shaman really has not had its place yet. And so honestly, I think that they could maybe come up with a new skill besides the stun rune. If they really wanted to keep the stun rune for some reason, then maybe they could make it to where it only stuns enemies and not allies. That would give a little bit more zone of control, because you could be in that area. It would protect an archer for 10 seconds because the archer could just kind of sit in the middle of that stun rune and no tanks could focus the archer. So those would be some ways of really benefiting the Shaman, making it more worthy to play. But they have to factor in when they're buffing the Shaman, and if they want to buff the Sorcerer as well, that it has to be as good as the healer. If they don't make these support classes as good as the healer, no one will ever play them. There won't be that diversity added into family play, and so we won't, experience that. And so that's really with the Shaman. They need to buff it quite a bit. After that, I would say we need to buff the Fire Mage, the Ice Mage, the Fire Mage, and the Illusionist. The Fire Mage is, some argue, the best PvP class in the game. It might not seem like that when you see these Sharpshooters totally decimating, but the people that are really good at getting into their inventory and dispelling quickly, which is a counter to the Fire Bow, they find the Fire Mage having sometimes an advantage over the Sharpshooter because they're able to work so quickly. That may not be for those of us who are not as good at PvP. It might feel like, no, the Sharpshooter's decimating. We see it decimate all the time. But for the top of the top, who are really good at dispelling quickly, the Fire Mage has some advantages. So, and then the Illusionist has a lot of, the Illusionist is a really good class, and maybe could be buffed just, like 5% on the combat staff damage, just to make it a little bit, do a little bit more damage. Ultimately, very small tweaks need to be made to the Illusionist, kind of like I was saying with the Sharpshooter. You can reduce the Sharpshooter down maybe 10 hit points, and maybe in the same way you can increase the Illusionist hit points by 10 hit points, or combat staff damage by 5%. Something very small. And really what I hope the devs do is that they just do a small tweak to, like, a small change, and then see how it goes. Obviously the Thrasher and the Bandit and the Hunter need bigger changes to be able to get anywhere. But I hope that the devs say, okay, let's start small, and if it's not enough, let's do a little bit more. And then if it's not enough, let's do a little bit more. What they did with the Bandit and how badly they nerfed it, it pretty much killed that class. And that's bad for two reasons. One, then we're over here like, oh, that class is worthless. If someone put a lot of work, I know people back then even had put a lot of work into getting a higher level Bandit, and then it was like, oh, now this is a worthless class. And so I know a lot of people put a lot of work into the Sharpshooter. They've put all the time it takes to get Sharpshooter 3. If it gets nerfed too hard, if they go too extreme to where it becomes a worthless class, it's going to make a lot of players really upset. So I hope they do small things, small tweaks, to just see how's the balance of the game. Listen to the community. What are you guys, dominating with? Look at the analytics. What are people dominating with? What are all the kills? Who's getting what kills? So anyways, back to the Ice Mage. The Ice Mage is a great idea. It is just such a good idea, but it just doesn't quite play out to where people really use it. So I have a couple ideas on the Ice Mage. Honestly, I already like its damage. I like its health. We already have two really big damage dealer mages, so having a more tanky damage, a little more tanky Ice Mage is a great idea. Honestly, the number one thing that if I were to change the Ice Mage, I would just reduce the cooldown on the ice path to 20 seconds or maybe even 15 seconds. I'd make it to where that Ice Mage can use his ice path often. Maybe I would reduce, if it was too OP, I'd reduce the path to only 3 seconds. But I would only do that if it was proven to be overpowered, because the truth is most family fights don't last longer than 20 seconds. And those fights where they do last longer is really where the Ice Mage becomes almost worthless. So like you use your skills and you've got nothing left. It's kind of a crappy class. And so that's what I was thinking. If they made it to where the ice path was on a 15-second cooldown where they could use it pretty often, then not only would it make the Ice Mage so much more fun, because the ice path and trying to get that combo is what's fun about the Ice Mage, but it wouldn't make the Ice Mage any more powerful in a team encounter. I mean, you've got that initial burst, which is really powerful and why the Ice Mage is every once in a while used, sometimes good in raid defense or raid attacking. But other than that, the Ice Mage just becomes worthless over time. So if all they did was increase or decrease the cooldown on the Ice Path to 15 seconds, then the Ice Mage, someone playing the Ice Mage would be able to have a lot of fun. You'd be able to get in there, and if it was a long, drawn-out fight, you'd be able to get another Ice Path in there, and it might be this clutch move where people might have expected in the beginning, but then they didn't realize your cooldown was already down, and so you're able to land it. So honestly, that's how I would fix the Ice Mage and make it into play, because ultimately the Ice Mage is still a pretty powerful class in that burst where you use that Ice Path. It's just after you use the Ice Path, it becomes kind of a worthless class. So that's why I would really focus on reducing the cooldown of the Ice Mage. I think it would, honestly, I would think it would fix the Ice Mage. It would make it to where some people's playstyles would use the Ice Mage more often, and the Fire Mage and Illusionist are already really good. The Protector is a great class. I think it should stay exactly where it is. It's already so needed in team PvP. I am going to make a suggestion when we get into weapons to reduce firebow damage just a little bit, which I think will make the Protector a lot tankier. In my opinion, longer drawn out battles to where the team that keeps their cool wins is the way Frostborn should be going. The fact that most fights are just a few seconds and then it's kind of, okay, we already know who's going to win, is kind of indicative to an imbalance. And the Protector is the best tank in the game. I think it should be even harder to kill. That being said, if they buff the Hunter the way that I was saying, where you basically reduce all healing for 9 seconds, then having a Hunter and say, okay, we're going to have a Hunter because it's the tank killer, and we're going to be a team that focuses the tank, and the Hunter's going to, click on that tank and say, you cannot heal, and then everyone's going to focus on that tank. And so even though the Protector will be tankier because the Firebow will be slightly nerfed, the Hunter will basically just say, no, the tank is pretty much worthless, and just evaporate the tank like that. So it'll create more purpose for a Hunter, or so on. It'll create more diversity. Hey, we have a Protector, which is going to be great, but they have a Hunter. You know what? This Protector is not going to be worth a lot to us because you can't heal. You know what's going to be more valuable is for us to get a Thrasher. And then the Thrasher's going to go in there and stun everybody, put his stun barrier. And so if the Hunter, let's say, marks the Thrasher, and then the Thrasher puts up his stun barrier, well, now everyone wants to attack the Thrasher because he's been marked or he's been, eliminated healing, but they're all going to get stunned if they try to do that. And so the Thrasher would be a counter in team play only to the Hunter. And so there's just a lot of ways that they could make these small tweaks to make these cross-play counters and make it to where there's going to be a lot more team diversity. Because right now, the team diversity that we experience is pretty much nothing. It is a Protector, a Healer, a Sharpshooter, and an Archmage. That is the current meta of Frostborn. And there are a few other variations. Every once in a while, someone will put an assassin in there, but ultimately, a really good top team is going to stick with the meta because it's going to have the best option. And speaking of the Archmage is still overpowered in team play, but kind of a little underpowered in solo play. And so, what I would say to balance the Archmage, I think it's super powerful, but it's also the highest tier, in the game. So what I would do to balance the Archmage is I would reduce the Loki Shroud to 5 seconds. 5 seconds of invincibility, as we're seeing, is already crazy powerful. In fact, honestly, I think they could reduce it to 3 seconds and it would still give teams a lot of play. But I think 5 seconds is probably where I would put it. Maybe reduce the cooldown to 60 seconds, but make it to where you're only getting 5 seconds of invisibility. That's going to really nerf it in the team dynamic where it's super powerful, super overpowered. And then I would buff the passive ability, the shield ability, to where it absorbs 80% of the damage. So that's going to make it twice the shield twice as powerful. That's going to make the Archmage really good in solo PvP. And not really good. It's still not going to be like a top class, but it's going to make it a lot better. It's going to trick a lot of people. People are going to think they're winning, and the Archmage is going to know, no, my shield is totally going to make me outlast you. And it's going to allow that Archmage to get some of those last second kills. It's going to give it a role in PvP. Maybe you won't be able to beat, a really talented Sharpshooter or a really talented Fire Mage because they're going to know, oh, his shield popped, I'm going to run away for a little bit. But for a lot of play, and already we can see this a few times. I've seen some Archmages kill some even pretty talented players because that pro player forgot, oh man, I'm not going to do quite as much damage as I thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to kill him, but he actually had an extra 100 health that I wasn't anticipating. So if you buff this shield, maybe 80% is too much, maybe 70%, you're going to make it better in solo PvP. But then if you nerf the Loki Shroud, it's going to make it a little bit more balanced in family PvP. Obviously still a very powerful class. Some of you guys have been hating on the Archmage. You guys have no clue. It is so powerful. It is to get that advantage to be able to come around and target someone's archer as an entire team and put someone out of position is so OP. And so you can still do that with 5 seconds. 5 seconds is a long time, especially when you think about it in the idea of combat. But 20 seconds is just ridiculous. Literally, you can just disappear for so long that the other team has literally no context for where you could be. And it's just so powerful. So if you make it 5 seconds, it's going to make those teams with the Archmage. I still think the Archmage will be the best family PvP class, and really kind of kill the Fire Mage and Illusionist in family PvP, but maybe not as much as it is now. And so that's my suggestion on that, reducing that to 5 seconds of invisibility, maybe reducing the cooldown so you could use it a little bit more, and then increasing the shield, which is still going to help it in family PvP because you're going to be really tanky. So if you guys have other suggestions on the Archmage, I'm still not 100% sure how to balance the Archmage. So if you guys have some comments on what you think, oh no, if you tweaked it this way or if you did this, it'd make it better. Okay, so I just covered the 16 classes of Frostborn. I think they should make this an archer killer, making it to where it's immune to fire and poison damage. That would not make it any more powerful in PvE. They should make the cooldown reduced on the ice path to 15 seconds. The Pathfinder is perfect. I think the Pathfinder is exactly where it needs to be. It's got a great role in team PvP. The Sharpshooter, maybe reduce the hit points by like 10. Nothing big, just play it out. Rogue is perfect how it is. I wouldn't change anything about the Rogue. Healer, same thing. Even though it's OP, it's okay. In my opinion, I think support classes should be a little OP. That's going to make them fun. The Protector should stay how it is, but we're going to hopefully, if my suggestion is to change the Fireball a little bit so that a Protector can truly be, tanky, because right now melting a tank is a very common tactic in family PvP, and that just feels a little wrong to melt a tank so quickly. The Fire Mage is perfect where it's at. It's super powerful. Some people might say nerf the Fire Mage. They might be right, but if they do nerf the Fire Mage, I hope you just reduce its health just by a tad. It is super powerful, but it's awesome that it's such a good damage dealer. The Sorcerer, I think, making the curse a lot more powerful is going to help it in PvP without giving it any more advantage. It's already super powerful in PvP, players versus enemies. So maybe just making the curse a little bit stronger to make the Sorcerer a playable character in PvP. The Bandit needs a lot of help. There's a lot of ways to do that. My favorite is to really lean into the immobilization. I think the Blinding Rune is very powerful, but it's kind of, I don't know. I think that you should really focus on the immobilization of the Bandit. The way I would do it would actually to make it to where it's It's this huge circle around it, just enemies, and it just immobilizes them. You just immobilize everyone. Basically, if you're around a bandit, you're going to get crazy immobilized. And so it immobilizes everyone for 3 seconds. Ranged characters are like, who cares? But the bandit's going to do extra damage. And then he's also got his throwing daggers. And then he can also have bolas, making it to where the bandit could just keep someone still for a very long time. That would be the way that I would do it. And then I might increase the bandit's hit points up to 100, just because if you're going to make a tank that is medium armor, you're going to need to give it more hit points, because in reality, Frostborn is already so damage centric. Battles don't last very long. You'd probably need to give the bandit more hit points or a buff to armor somehow. I don't know how you do that. The hunter should be the ultimate tank killer. It's already pretty good at tank killing, so just really lean into it. If you made the mortal shot reduce healing effects by 80% or 100%, then it would just instantly be so useful to killing any tank, because that's what makes a tank so powerful, is that they can heal and their armor reduces damage so they can keep going. And so if you're able to mortal shot someone and say, hey, you're not allowed to heal, your healer's not allowed to heal you, that would make the hunter this very powerful class. I mentioned adding poison damage to it, but honestly, I just think leaning into what you're already doing, just reduce that, healing effect by even more. Make it, honestly, I'd make it 100%. Make it just a mortal shot. Make it actually worth something to make the hunter be the ultimate tank killer. Then the Thrasher, my ideas, were not my ideas. That I got both of those ideas from Garasu, and I think they're brilliant ideas. Making the leap just a really quick animation so that it's worth something, and then making the stun barrier 6 seconds of a 1 second stun every time they shoot you. That's gonna make the Thrasher feel tanky and feel kind of intimidating. And so tweaking that. The Illusionist, I'd buff just a little bit maybe. Then again, if you're lowering the Fire Mage by a little bit, then just keep the Illusionist as it is. But having a little tweak. I think the Illusionist should be better at killing players, based on, you put the role PvP to kill players. And so if the Fire Mage is actually better at killing players, it seems a little weird to me. But I wouldn't nerf the Fire Mage and buff the Illusionist. I would just do one or other, just a small tweak, because they do both have a purpose. And then the Shaman needs a lot of work. Either, making its gear recharge like 50%, creating a new skill besides the stun rune, or changing it pretty drastically. The Shaman needs a lot of work, because it has to be, just like the Sorcerer and Shaman need to be equivalent to the healer if anyone's ever going to use them. And so you got to work on that. It needs a lot of help to be able to make the Shaman have a good play in it. The Assassin is perfect how it is. Y'all already nerfed the Assassin but when you made it a little bit slower to sneak attack, and I think that's great. I think the Assassin is perfect as it is. Someone who's really good at the Assassin can just dominate, and it's supposed to be a PvP liquidation class. I think it's perfect just the way it is. I wouldn't change anything about the Assassin. And then lastly, as I mentioned, I feel like the Archmage, you should reduce its family PvP OP-ness, because it's just way too powerful in family PvP. Reduce the Loki Shroud to like 5 seconds of invisibility. Maybe reduce the cooldown so you can use it more often, but make it just have that. Make it have to use some skill of when the Archmage can apply his Loki Shroud, because if you just make it to where he has 20 seconds, he doesn't require any skill. I'm glad y'all reduced it from 60 seconds, which was ridiculous. But I think that lowering it down to 5 seconds of an entire team having true invisibility is awesome. We don't need 20 seconds. So I think reducing that, but then maybe make the Archmage a little bit better in solo PvP. Make that shield, don't bring it back up to 95% for 4 seconds. That was way too powerful. But maybe 70%, maybe 75%, somewhere around that range at this 3 seconds is going to give them that last second edge to win some more of those solo PvP fights. Well, that's it, guys. I know I said in the beginning of this video that I was going to cover all of the weapons as well, and I actually already recorded it, but it was making way too long of a video, so we're going to split them up into 2 videos, and we'll show that the one on the weapons maybe tomorrow or as soon as we can, and then this one's just going to be about the classes. So if you guys liked my suggestions, or if you had any other suggestions, anything that you would want to tweak about these 16 classes, make sure to put it in a comment and like other people's comments that you like, so that they'll kind of raise to the top, because the devs watch all of these videos and they'll be able to see those suggestions and hopefully make those changes. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.